Hello, fellas and ladies. Rich people. Don't like them. It's not a political channel, but let me tell you, those elite folks have had enough of them. But hear this out, though, Buster. Nobody hates those guys more than our good friends over at A24. They can't stand rich people. They hate them. They really, oof. Oh. There seems to be a new trend in Hollywood that blends comedy and some form of horror and thriller to create some form of anti-establishment satire. The Menu is the first that comes to mind for a lot of people, it seems. But I feel like this mostly started somewhere with Get Out or Parasite. All three of these movies are pretty excellent and all do the thing I was saying. Get Out uses horror to tackle the awkwardness and even scary areas of liberal racism. Parasite uses a plethora of genres, from comedy to outright thriller, to tackle the sobering difficulties of poverty. The Menu is a ridiculous thriller that tackles class differentiation through the world of high cuisine. All three of these films are excellent commentary films, but even if you don't get the politics of it, you still got very fun movies. Other films have tried similar things to varying degrees of success. The Knives Out movies are perfect examples of movies that do these. Don't Worry Darling is a popular example. Triangle of Sadness is one. Blink Twice tries as well. Very common thing with pretty much all of these is they always end with, mindless bloodshed. But in 1 month, we get two from A24. Opus and Death of a Unicorn. Opus really has the Menu Get Out thing down to a T in all the wrong ways. From a pure thematic standpoint, though, Death of a Unicorn definitely has its own identity. If anything, it's taking more from Jurassic Park. But I still think it's an example of how these movies can go so south. Let's start with Opus. Opus follows a group of journalists in varying degrees who visit a compound that has a cult-like vibe that's led by an old pop star in the midst of a big comeback album. This is written and directed by Mark Anthony Green. And I know I said earlier that most people think of The Menu, but I think other films started this trend beforehand. But it really did feel like Mark Anthony Green saw The Menu and went, I want to do that now. Start off with what I like, because that part will be quick. The cast is fine with one glaring exception. Ayoade Berry is not bad. She definitely doesn't do anything wrong. It doesn't have a wrong beat. She isn't the issue with this movie. Murray Bartlett, similar thing, although his character definitely has some beats that I did not like, although Bartlett did the best he can. John Malkovich is so bad. He's terrible. He's just, awkward. I don't know. He's, gives an awkward performance, which could be construed as intentional, but, there was, nothing about him seemed like this aging pop star. I think he was meant to be an Elton John-esque figure, but it just did not play well at all. He wasn't particularly spooky either. It just didn't work. Malkovich was just not good. So yeah, what I did not like about this movie. It took an hour and 20 minutes to set up. It goes through the typical Get Out Menu kind of thing of what the frick, what's going on here? Ayoade Berry is the one who's doing that, going what the frick? Something's weird here. Wait a minute, what? Everyone else is completely oblivious, although it makes no sense why they're oblivious. Some obscene shit happens, where it's unquestionable that something off is happening, and everyone else is no, John Malkovich wouldn't do that. Whereas Ayoade Berry is the one going hey guys, this fucking weird guy has been chasing me this whole movie. Something must be up with that. The movie's not particularly funny. The tension is just completely gone. It's just so sloppily put together. I've noticed how whack the filmmaking is when I realized I wasn't feeling an ounce of tension with this movie. Even in moments when maybe I should have been. One aspect I love about The Menu is how many characters there were, and yet you get all of them. Even if you don't feel for all of them, you still get all of them. This one, there's a character that dies pretty quickly, who I don't even think has a word. Doesn't say anything. And yet, that's, the only one whose, relationship with John Malkovich is established. And yet, they're just, he doesn't get a word. But the movie takes so long to set up, and by the time we finally get to the mayhem, to the bloodshed, it just feels like I don't care. The movie does have this blanketed statement on stan culture. John Malkovich pretty much lays it out in the end, and that's the most interesting the movie gets. Problem is, I was kind of where was this the whole movie? I get there's a cult that he runs basically, but I didn't get that idea. There was a bit of a Jonestown thing in this movie, but that's about it. It really just feels kind of shock and awe with this idea of planting a commentary about culture and stan culture and celebrity culture on us, but doesn't really give us a reason to. If it was purely that people are too obsessed with celebrities, that's one thing, but that doesn't really do anything with that. And I think it also implies that these celebrities thrive off of these these cult-like stands. The movie just took way too long to set up to care. There's some interesting set values that the movie doesn't do anything with. But when we finally get to the violence, it just feels like, okay, okay, that's it, it's over, okay. It feels like the worst case scenario for these kind of movies, where it's like, you're not trying to form an identity of your own, you're just wanting to be that. Blink Twice is not a good movie in my opinion, but I still can say that there's some aspects of the movie that I admire, for example, and one of them is that Zoe Kravitz, the director, clearly had its own identity fully realized. It just, a lot of the writing didn't work. Blink Twice falls apart due to incompetency, but this movie falls apart because I believe intention was just completely off. If you've seen the trailer for Opus, you know exactly what you're getting. But it can't even accomplish the very basic thing it had to do. It was just awkward for the most part. As a commentary, it feels very hidden in the film's endless setup, awful creative decisions, and poor character writing. Opus is quite literally the menu off of Temu, and it can't even be fun like that one, and I'm giving it 3 IOs out of 10. Death of a Unicorn follows a father-daughter duo played by Jenna Ortega and Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd plays the dad, and Jenna Ortega plays the daughter, if that wasn't clear. And they're on the way to a summit at Paul Rudd's character's boss's house when they suddenly hit a unicorn with their car, and the wealthy family wants to exploit the unicorn for profit. Yeah, this movie's pretty obvious. Can I just say, I was genuinely excited for this movie when I heard the concept. It sounded fun. They hit a unicorn with their car, and then shit goes off from there. That sounds awesome. It sounds dope. And I can definitely say, while it's not a good one or a particularly mind-blowing one, it does have its own identity. Granted, in any other context, if I was reviewing this movie on its own, without the context of Opus and the Eat the Rich shit, I would not be bringing that up. Its identity is very much nothing. But at least it has something, whereas, Opus is just kind of copy and paste. Again, what I liked, because it'll be short. Once again, I didn't mind the cast, for the most part. Actually, there are a couple of casts that hit bad notes, but I'll talk about who I liked first. Will Poulter was a real, scene stealer. The wealthy family is, as you would expect, kind of cartoon characters, but he kind of does the thing where he draws a line of being a goofy idiot, while, there's, a sense of realism to him. His naivete and his stupidity and his doofusness kind of comes off as believable, and it actually makes me laugh. Jenna Ortega's kind of doing the grumpy thing again. I really think she needs to get out of this typecast ASAP, but, she isn't bad. She definitely does, again, what she's supposed to do. She has, the emotional beats. She plays it well. Anthony Carrigan's fun, I guess. He doesn't do anything, but he is fun. There is some fun aspects when it comes to a full-blown monster movie, but they don't really do that well either. In terms of, a pure freak entertainment movie, which I know some people are going to throw at my face because they love to do that when I don't like a fun movie. This movie's not very funny. This movie is, very rarely made me laugh. Only sometimes Will Poulter... His delivery made me laugh, but for the most part, the humor is very obvious. Paul Rudd's shtick of being a lovable doofus doesn't really work, which is sad because it usually is reliable, but it doesn't really land here. I think he is trying to go a little more serious than usual, which I do admire. But then again, he kind of went more serious tone in Friendship, and that was a lot funnier. I think Richard E. Grant's hamminess can be considered funny. I didn't particularly find it funny, but I see the intention there. Téa Leoni feels like she's in a different movie. All the rich family feel like they're in different movies entirely, and I like the one Will Poulter was in the most. But yeah, overall, did not find this movie very funny. I think the humor felt very I think there's a cardinal sin in writing comedy, which is if you're writing jokes that you think people will find funny and not jokes that you find funny, then it's not gonna make people laugh. The movie definitely devolves into a monster movie when the parents of the unicorn show up and start slaughtering people. For one, it kind of relies on cheap jump scares for a bit. I think the movie tries the Jurassic Park thing, but it just doesn't work because the movie, it does the Deadpool thing where it just kind of goes, oh, but it's gory, therefore it's cool, therefore it's funny and interesting. But it's just kind of mindless gore, which, I can be a sucker for. The Shadow Strays, for example, is an example of a movie where the gore really helped with the action, but in this case, it just felt like a cop-out. There was no weight to any of the violence in this movie. Probably because there was never a moment, at least towards the end, I should say, when the unicorns look like they're on screen. CGI was not good. Sorry, let me rephrase. I think the design of the unicorns, I don't know, I didn't have an issue with that. It was more just, I didn't believe for a second they were in that house, or that someone was looking at a unicorn. Plotting overall is really bad. The pacing is not great. There's a whole subplot where Jenna Ortega's character is looking for folklore-ish history, when it comes to unicorns, and that was a huge momentum killer. The father-daughter thing between Paul Rudd and Jenna Ortega, like, comes so close to working, it just doesn't. I feel like I wish there was a little bit more development for that. It could have been a little bit emotionally effective. I think when it comes to its commentary, it just doesn't work. It's so obvious. These are pharmaceutical rich people. They're gonna exploit the unicorn. They exploit the working class. They exploit the animals in nature. Yeah, even Will Poulter's character being like a trust fund prick. He's like, he's an idiot. He loves drugs, all that shit. And like the wife is like, super entitled and like, oh, I don't want to do anything. It's very obvious. It's very much a waste of its concept. There could have been like a nature or an environmental thing where they could have done with this, but it just felt like the movie just wanted to stick it to the rich folks, which is fun. Fuck those guys. But like, be funny at least. Like, I feel like I would have been okay with it if it was funny, but it wasn't. It's very out of touch. It feels very lame. By the time it was over, I was so over it. There's such an obvious fun concept in Death of a Unicorn, but in every way they squandered it. Not saying the commentary was unnecessary, it was just obvious. On top of that, it wasn't very funny or intense. The monster movie stuff could have been better utilized if it didn't just resort to being gory as an asset. The script, the editing, the pacing, it's all so sloppy. And I was ready for this to be over for a while. And I'm giving Death of a Unicorn 3.5 Ruds out of 10. Rough run for A24. Yeah, not the best year. Friendship's coming soon, so that's going to save it. Warfare, I heard, is not bad. Legend of Achi, I heard, isn't bad. And then obviously the guys who did Talk to Me are making a new movie, so I'm excited for that. As long as they stop, sticking it to the rich guys. I mean, you can just be funny or interesting. Subscribe and share. Bye-bye.